respect that water a tremendous amount.
Yeah, you have to have respect for it.
The Great Lakes are a force of nature, and one stands apart from the rest. Lake Superior is the biggest and deepest of the 5 Great Lakes. For centuries, humankind has fought to navigate these waters that serve as a critical artery in the heartbeat of North American commerce. Taking on Superior is no small challenge, but it's one men like Ransom Cundy didn't shy away from.
He was driven. He enjoyed sailing. I can't imagine what that'd be like, to be a father with young children at home, and I have a deep appreciation for what mariners do. Somebody's got to do the job.
He was always joking around, but he was the one that people would go to when they had something, a problem, or someone to talk to. He was that guy, and it just shows the character, how good of a person he was.
Oliver Buck Champeau also chose the life of a Great Lakes mariner.
I was Daddy's girl, and he was this big guy that had this laugh that would fill a room. He always didn't say he loved what he did, that it was kind of a lonely life being out there on the ship, but he was close to all the guys that were on the ship with him. They were like brothers and sons and very close-knit group. He ended up not graduating from high school and went to work because his dad died young and he had to provide for the family. So he was very devoted to family.
And in November of 1975, Cundy, Champeau, and 27 other men found themselves on board the finest freighter the Great Lakes had to offer, the Edmund Fitzgerald.
This was a ship that was built to carry steel, carry iron ore, basically. It was built to be fast. It was going to have some of the finest appointments on board. If you were a crewman, you could be pretty happy, pretty proud that you were serving on the Queen of the Lakes, the Edmund Fitzgerald, one of the fastest ships, one of the newer ships that were operating.
Owned by the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, the ship was named for the outgoing company president.
The Fitzgerald was the creme de la creme. This was going to be the largest object ever dropped into fresh water. It stopped a 5-year drought of shipbuilding in Michigan.
By the time she was ready to launch in June of 1958, the Fitzgerald brought the promise of both profit and prestige.
It had beautiful furnishings, had the best cook in Columbia's fleet, Red Bergner, had the best captains and the best crew, and it was a ship to behold. Not only was the first to get into the 30,000 range in the taconite, but it was the first to break the 1 million ton record for a year.
Those records earned her nicknames like the Toledo Express and the Mighty Fitz.
I just thought it was cool that my grandfather was climbing on board the thing, right? And we were fortunate enough actually to go back with him to the Fitzgerald and actually watch him climb the ladder to board it along with his best friend, Freddie Beecher. And it was just majestic, right? And nothing like I'd ever seen before.
By 1975, the Fitzgerald wasn't breaking records at the same blistering pace, but she was still one of the workhorses of the Great Lakes, and no stranger to the challenges of sailing them.
For 2 years in a row, Fitzgerald had the most storms, and that was under Captain Pulser. And then when McSorley came, every time you'd look at the chart, the Fitzgerald would be in there taking on these gales. And in 1975, it was no different. From spring to fall, they had been in no less than 5 storms, one on Lake Huron, and then 4 others on gale force winds that were coming out of Lake Superior.
As the end of the Great Lakes shipping season approached, the Fitzgerald and her crew were preparing to face off once again with Lake Superior's infamous gales of November. It's November 9th, 1975. The Edmund Fitzgerald and her crew of 29 men are about to set out from Superior, Wisconsin, bound for Zug Island near Detroit. They're led by seasoned Great Lakes Captain Ernest McSorley. Following behind the Fitz is the Arthur M. Anderson, led by Captain Bernie Cooper.
The weather when they departed was fantastic, unseasonably warm, beautiful weather. But they knew that there was something brewing on the lake, and actually it was brewing in other areas and converging on the lake.
Both ships opt for a route along the northern side of Lake Superior.
Small craft warnings were coming out. No small boats were allowed out. They knew it was going to escalate as the front left Oklahoma and came up. The question was, as it approached Marquette, how long would it take to get across Lake Superior and then change the wind direction from a nor'easter to the northwest, where those winds would now be pushed by 70-mile-an-hour winds that would push those waves so tall they'd be as big as a 3-story building. The problem is that both captains, Cooper and McSorley, misguessed on how fast. It was easily an hour faster than they thought.
They weren't having seas that were boarding them or causing them any real problems until they made that turn and started heading down to Whitefish Bay. Snow squalls were coming and going. Again, the waves were getting higher, the intensity was growing.
The afternoon of November 10th brought the first signs of trouble for the Fitzgerald. Captain Cooper recalled what happened in this 1993 interview.
Well, he called me up, that was 3:10 in the afternoon. And he said, I've got a little problem. He said, my fence rail is down. He said, I've got 2 vents missing, and I've taken a starboard list. I asked him if he had his pumps on. He said yes. But he said later on, he said that he wasn't gaining anything by pumping out on it, so the water was coming in the hull as fast as they were pumping it out. From that time on, he was sinking. The water would get into these side tanks, and if his side tanks were not tight, watertight, the water would start leaking through them into the cargo hold, into the pellets. There's no way of getting the water out of the cargo hold with the pellets in there.
As the storm intensified, the Fitzgerald was sailing blind, relying on the Anderson to guide her.
Well, he called one time, I can remember, and told me, he said, my big radar is gone, has been gone. He said, and the small one is only getting out 3.5 miles. The last transmission we had with my first mate, I was down below. The first mate, Morgan Clark, he called the Fitzgerald and told him about these 3 ships, these 3 saltwater ships that were coming out of the bay. And McSorley, I don't know if we talked, I guess it was McSorley he was talking to. He said, well, am I going to clear them? And Morgan said, yeah. He said, you're going to be well clear of them. And then Morgan, as an afterthought, said, how you doing? He said, we're holding our own. That was at 7:10.
A short time later, Captain Cooper and his crew made a horrifying discovery.
When we missed him was when it cleared up, and we could, in fact, it cleared up right shortly after that he sunk, I think. We saw the 3 vessels coming out of the bay and no Fitzgerald lights.
This radio chatter between Captain Cooper and the Coast Guard captured those alarming first moments after the Fitzgerald disappeared.
Just for confirmation, sir, he couldn't see any lights pick him up on radar either, is that correct? No, I don't know. I thought we were picking him up on radar when I came up in the window and talked to the mate. The sea was kind of real bad, but we thought we had the target. But I don't know. Now I wonder. At what time was the last time that you had any times or that you noticed that you had the Fitzgerald in front of you, over? 1900. 1900, he was approximately 15 miles from the high up at Crisp Point. That's when I was talking to him. He was 15 miles from the land. You had him visually and on the radar, and you lost him in both respects. No, I didn't have him visually. I had him on the radar. He was exactly 10 miles ahead of us. I asked him at the time how everything was going. I asked him how he was making out with his problem. He said he lost those vents and he had a loose, and he said he was holding his own. The last time I talked with him, he said he was holding his own, and that's the last time I lost contact after that. Roger that, and also, I understand there were 3 outbounders that were to keep an eye out for this, for Fitzgerald, and they passed for negative contact, is that correct? Roger on that. We tried to call him about 6 or 8 times on emergency FM and emergency FM that every day we cannot reach.
That realization launched a frantic search effort, including this chilling request of Captain Cooper and his crew on the Anderson.
Yesterday, possibly, that you could come about and go back there and doing searching. Over. Oh, God, I don't know. The sea out there is tremendously large. If you want me to, I can, but I'm not going to be making any time. I'll be lucky to make 2 or 3 miles an hour going back out that way.
I was reluctant to go, really I was. But he said there's a ship on the bottom, and I felt like saying there could be 2 if I go back. I still thought it was an exercise in futility with what had happened, with the sudden disappearance. He had to be on the bottom with no maydays or anything. No, I was just scared the hell I was going to find somebody. And I didn't know what I was going to do.
I'm going to run out to about 14 miles away from Coppermine Point. And then I think I'm going to turn and come down inside again a couple of miles to the east of the course that Fitzgerald came down, and see if I can pick up any oil slick or debris.
That's all the Anderson and other searchers would find.
We started running through a lot of debris, gas tanks, like for the stoves, life preservers, oars, canisters, but no sign of anybody else.
Search crews would soon learn the heart-wrenching reality of what happened to the Fitzgerald and her crew.
An air and sea search is continuing for possible survivors of the Edmund Fitzgerald, a 729-foot ore carrier, which apparently broke apart and sunk last night on Lake Superior.
By the morning of November 11th, 1975, it was clear. The Edmund Fitzgerald and her crew were gone.
I was kindergarten or preschool or something like that back then, and the rest of my brothers and sisters had gone to school, and I was home with my youngest sister, and it just, sometime in that morning, word started to spread that there was a ship missing, and it came out later that it was Edmund Fitzgerald. Of course, we knew what that meant. My mother did. And so to process that and realizing that he wasn't coming home, and then the days that followed, having a casket without a body for a funeral was pretty tough.
I was 17 when he passed away, and it took us a while to know what happened. But once we found out that it was a sure thing that he was on the Fitz, it was pretty devastating to his family and my family. And I was graduating from high school, and I thought my dad wouldn't have stopped for anything not to be at my graduation. He was a good swimmer. He swam to a cave. I thought all kinds of things unanswered.
By morning, they realized 29 guys were gone, and that was the big mystery. How did 29 guys vanish in 1975 when we had a weather satellite in the sky, we had what we thought were modern boats, radio direction finders? How did that happen?
It's a question that's never been definitively answered. About all historians and researchers have ever concluded is that whatever happened to the Fitzgerald happened fast.
The ship just disappeared completely. I mean, and it had to just dive under, and then that stern screw, or that screw on the ship, just acted like a propeller and like a submarine, just drove it right to the bottom. To me, she just went down so fast, so quick, that just nobody had a chance. And I don't think there could be any conjecture about that. Hell, all you had to do is pick up the phone and say, Mayday, Mayday. And there's nothing.
I wanted to know how he died. What was he thinking at the end? Did he know this was the end? But I understand through time and talking to other engineers and that it was a very quick, and if he was at his post, which I believe he was, they didn't have time to even know what was going on. Was he praying? Was he scared? Was he trying to protect other, just unanswered.
The loss also ripped through the maritime community.
It shook it so hard that we didn't see another big loss after that. We found most of the crew of the Bradley. We had 2 survivors in 1958. In 1966, when the Morel went down, Dennis Hale survived. Most of the bodies were found, but the Fitzgerald, 29 guys vanished. And that's when the world went crazy. That's why Newsweek wrote the article. That's why Gordon Lightfoot saw it and said, I'm going to write a song about that.
With the load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty.
Gordon Lightfoot had a huge impact on the telling of this story and putting this shipwreck, and maybe to a certain degree shipwrecks in general on the Great Lakes, into the public consciousness. It's a great song. It tells the story really, really well and pretty accurately, but it also made people learn, whether they wanted to or not, about this ship called the Edmund Fitzgerald.
The song helped make the Fitzgerald the most well-known and most talked about shipwreck on the Great Lakes. As the years began passing, interest in the Fitzgerald only seemed to grow, along with her legend.
I find peace here in the museum.
This is Whitefish Point. The Edmund Fitzgerald and her crew fought valiantly to reach this spot on November 10, 1975. The ship went down just 17 miles from here. The Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum at Whitefish Point is now home to the Fitzgerald's bell, serving as a lasting link to the ship and her crew.
That's the closest that I can get to my dad. And when we ring it, I just imagine that it was ringing back then, and with that storm 50 years ago, it was chiming and just knowing how bad it really was. And I come here and I touch the bell. I've kissed the bell. It means more to me than the symbolization of it. It was the soul of the ship, and it was the closest thing to my dad.
So the bell mean it's the heart of the ship. Get a little emotional here.
Yeah, it's a piece of the ship, you know, where there's nothing else, you know, it's something concrete where you can see it, and when we go to ring it, you know, and where it's all that's left of it, you know what I mean, where everything else is at the bottom of the lake.
There have been only a handful of dives to the wreck site of the Fitzgerald in the years since her sinking.
Until you're in a submarine and you go up to the letters of the Edmund Fitzgerald that are this wide, and you realize how big that vessel is, and then you start to see the humanity of the ship. That's the blankets that are hanging out of the windows. We saw, I think, weather tarps that were used to keep the splashing from coming up onto the deck that was torn away, and maybe I mistook that for blankets, but I got this feeling that this was not just a ship, this was a place where men worked and lived.
The dive to retrieve the ship's bell in July of 1995 was the last dive on the Fitzgerald, and the Fitzgerald families hope that remains the case.
We've got protection over the site, and we've asked the province of Ontario and the state of Michigan, who've enacted laws to protect sites against dives and photographing remains. And I feel like we've got that closure, you know, and I think it's left to others who want the ultimate answer.
I just want his remains left in peace. And that's why I come up here every year. That's why I'm emotional, because I don't believe anymore in closure. I don't think it exists when you lose a loved one. And if the tables were turned and that was me that was on the Fitz, my dad wouldn't have stopped at anything to figure out how to protect me.
We'll likely never know everything that may have happened that November night a half-century ago. For the families of the 29 men lost when the Edmund Fitzgerald went down, their focus isn't theories about why or even how. What matters most 50 years later is making sure the memories of the ship and her crew live on.
To me, the most important thing to do is remember those crewmen. And by virtue of that, remember all the sailors that are lost in the Great Lakes, and passengers that were on passenger vessels, and life-saving service crewmen that were out there trying to rescue people on shipwrecks.
Legends are made to be repeated. I think they're probably remembered a lot more than what you realize by the ships that are still sailing. You know, the skippers that go up through there. I still think, you know, the thought would cross their mind when you were going over, possibly over where the Fitzgerald sunk it. Say, oh boy, there's a Fitzgerald down there.
I'd like to just have respect for the family, have respect for the men that went down, you know, that's what I would want.
But I don't want the 50th anniversary of the Fitzgerald sinking to be just about the men and the Fitzgerald. It should be about the dedication, the courage it takes for all mariners who are still sailing today and providing us with the service. I think at the end of the day, people just have to understand, you know, the dedication, the courage, and the sacrifice that the maritime community, you know, not just across the Great Lakes, but across the oceans as well, they sacrifice a lot to support their families. And at the end of the day, we never got closure. Grandpa never came home, but the legend lives on.
doesn't seem, even after 50 years, that it gets easier. I look for closure, but I don't think there is any closure. My eyes are on the ship all the time. That's what I've told my grandchildren. That's what I told my sons and my daughters, to always look out. Eyes on the Fitz, eyes on the Fitz, you know, because at some point, I don't know when, I don't think I'll be alive, but it's still going to be protected by family members. So the legacy does live on.